Thank you, gentlemen. This is rumor control. Here are the facts.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome to another exciting edition of The Rational Male. Wednesday, Thursday, yeah, maybe tomorrow. Who knows? I'll release today. How about today? Wednesday edition of The Rational Male with your wonderful host, Rolla Tomasi. Today, we're going to be talking about double standards. And the reason why I wanted to get into this, I'm trying to make this as simple as possible to understand because I think we get almost like too simplistic when we come to when we encounter the idea of double standards. Double standards is something that I think that women have owned for a long time. And I'm not just talking about something, it's not like some new invention. This is something that has been going on for a very long time. I mean, as far back as almost like the 50s. Okay. I mean, we're like the boomer generation or prior to the boomer generation, right? I can remember hearing this same argument come from women all the time. Now, whenever you hear double standard, those two words together, double and standard together, coming from a woman, it will almost invariably be followed by, well, don't you think that it's completely unfair that a guy who has sex with a lot of women is a superhero? He's a stud. He gets patted on the back. He's got high status. But if a woman has a lot of sexual partners, then she's loose. And I'm not going to say the word because I don't want to get banned for this one, but you know what I'm talking about. She is see you next Tuesday, right? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I just don't want to get banned. My bad. So a loose woman, let's just say, she is, let's say, looked down upon for having multiple sexual partners, and women think that this is terribly unfair. And I have to admit that a lot of the concern about this comes prior even to the sexual revolution. In the early 60s, maybe even the late 50s, the same thing was, I mean, you could see it in the literature of that time, even in the Beat generation, which was the late 40s. The idea that guys could go and sleep around or sow their wild oats, and they were expected to. In a lot of different cultures, men are expected to, at least a high value man, an alpha man, whatever we're calling it, whatever the popular euphemism is today, the guy who other men want to be, and other women want to bang, that guy is almost expected to cheat on the woman. High status, high powered guys are expected to be able to have multiple partners and or have had them in the past, which increases his status, not just amongst men, but also amongst women. And that, I think, is the operative point here. Now, when we are talking about double standards, this is one double standard amongst hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of double standards between men and women. But when you hear the word double standard, the term double standard, it is almost invariably in relation to that question right there, to the difference between mating strategies of men and women. And I'm going to define this for you really quick, and then we're going to get into some other double standards today. So this is going to be like a half and half show. So the first half of today's show, we're going to talk about that double standard. And then we're going to talk about the other double standards that exist between men and women that tend to be a lot more downside for men. Because when we talk about double standards, we tend to think of them as only affecting women. When a woman says a guy is a commitment phobe or committophobe or whatever, or he's threatened by a strong, successful woman or a career woman or a powerful woman, what she's saying is she's expecting you to sort of buck the trend, to sort of man up. Again, it's that manhood medal where the expectation is for you to be so secure in your masculinity that you don't mind getting with a woman who is masculinized. It's kind of funny that should be a prerequisite, I think, for strong, independent women today, which everyone is, right? And in Western societies anyways, in Western cultures. Well, that sounds like a double standard, but it's only a double standard if you understand or if you presume that there is a baseline equality between men and women. So if men and women are just the same, yeah, that's a double standard. That's horrible. But if men and women are different, that throws that whole argument about double standards straight out the window, because men are men and women are women. They're subject to different environmental circumstances, different social circumstances, different gendered social circumstances, different biological social circumstances, biological circumstances, different mating strategies, different mentalities, different objectives, different goals in those mating strategies. And if we accept that, if we can accept the fact that men and women are different, and we think differently, we prioritize instinct, emotion, and reason differently. When we accept the fact that there are not just biological differences between men and women, but psychological, mental firmware that has been evolved over hundreds of thousands of years between men and women have different goals, and often competing goals, often adversarial goals when it comes to their mating strategies, then that double standard doesn't seem so bad, or it's put into a different light. Now, you know what I'm going to say, because this is the standard pablum that even well-meaning red pill guys throw out there. Whenever a woman brings up this double standard, isn't it terrible? It's so horrible that women can't do the same thing that men do. They can't be held to the same higher esteem, or they can't gain status because they've had a lot of sexual partners. Now, there's a fundamental pragmatic reason for that, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But here's, you know what I'm going to say. In the red pill community, there's the old, let's say, chestnut, right? That, a guy who is the key and a woman who is the lock, right? If a man has a key and he's a master key, that makes him a pretty useful key. He unlocks a lot of different locks. But if you have a woman who is the lock and she will open for any key, that makes her a pretty useless lock. Now, I'm not going to use the terminology, but you know what I'm talking about. It's that same trope. It's that same thing. Women are the locks and men are the keys. Women are the gatekeepers to sexuality, and men are the gatekeepers, or should be the key masters, right? To commitment. I've done episodes about that. I'm not going to dig into too much about commitment and the gatekeepers and the key masters in this one. But the idea is this, is that women have a different role. They have a different function. They have and what is that function? What defines that function? What defines women as the lock, and what makes men the key? A higher value man is more of a master key, right? A lower value man, he might be able to get one or two locks, and that's about it. Unless that lock happens to be a really crummy lock. And so there's this quality assurances that kind of go along with these, but there's an understanding that men are the keys and women are the locks. And so when we say a woman is, who's a loose woman is a really lousy key because she's holding something that's very, very valuable. Well, when we look at it in those terms, now we're looking at it in the terms of men and women are different, not the same. And what we're talking about when we talk about double standards, we are presuming the reason why we're so offended and it's so outrageous that men can do this and women can't. It's because we think that there is no differences, that men and women should be exactly the equal. They're functional equals, functional, rational, decision-making, well-evolved, mature equals. And the only difference between the two of them is the plumbing. And that's nonsense. It's been nonsense for a long time, but we're still operating under the presumption that we're still the same, that we're men and women are exactly the equal. We should have equal opportunity. We should have equal, of course, now we want equality of outcome on top of everything else. I'm not going to get into gynocentrism or feminism in this one, but I will get into blank slate equalism today. And we will get into the idea of social constructionism, because those double standards, that one double standard anyways, doesn't exist if there isn't social constructionism and if there isn't a blank slate understanding for equality, egalitarianism. Equalism is the word that I've applied to it. I'm trying to popularize. I've been trying to use that word for a long time. But when I say blank slate equalism, it's this belief that all is equal, that the blank slate is equal, that men and women are just whatever we decide, we all come out tabula rasa, right? We're all born with a blank slate and we write on it whatever society writes on it. Nonsense. Men and women have differences, and men and women have different mating strategies. And as a result of that, the reason why there's conflict is because I think on some level of consciousness, men and women understand that we have differing roles. Women have to be concerned, and have been over the course of millennia, over the course of our evolutionary ancestral past, they had to be concerned with nurturing the next generation. Sorry, ladies, you are the incubators of the next generation. There's no other way to put that. Men cannot incubate the next generation. Women have done that for a long time, and as a result, their evolved mental firmware is such that the value that they hold, the reason why they are the locks, the reason why they are the filters for the quality control, it should be the quality control for the master keys and the really crummy keys that only open 1 or 2 locks, that beta male guy, or the alpha male who opens lots and lots of locks. The reason why that exists is because women have to be concerned with quality. They have to be a good lock. You have to be a good lock. Now, I'm not coming down on that trope because it's useful. There's so much more to that than just understanding that, oh, you're the lock and I'm the key, right? Okay, well, that's good and that's simple and it's easy to understand and most people can pick up on that. But you have to understand the basis for why we call women the locks and why we call men the keys. It's not just, insert slot A or, tab A into slot B. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is men have to have something that opens that lock. And if that lock tries to act like a key, it's an extension. It's an extension of women masculinizing themselves and trying to live like men do because we believe that we're equal. Because we believe that we're blank slates. A woman can be just as effective a man as she can be a woman. And we would like to think, of course, and we're trying to popularize the idea that the more feminine and the more effeminate, the more feminine-like, the more woman-like, the more female, the more a man identifies with his emotions and identifies with the feminine, then he is more effective. A man can be just as good a woman as a woman can be a man. The only state that exists in is when we believe in a blank slate, when we believe that men and women are just equal and we have equal potential. It's nonsense. We did not evolve that way. Our machinery is not that way. And so that's how you get those double standards. The only double standard, it's a standard, right? Well, what's the standard? The standard is men and women should be able to have sex whenever they want, however they want, free of worry about anything beyond, maybe disease, right? Now, or abortion, right? Or pregnancy. Now we don't have to worry about that, right? Courtesy of hormonal birth control and the sexual revolution, we no longer have to worry about that, right? Maybe not. But the thing is that the only way that we can sort of enjoy casual sex, the only way we can make sex recreational is to have men and women be different. They still have to have, men have a higher libido. Men have a different kind of sex drive. We have a different imperative. Men's sexuality is always on. I don't know if you guys understand that, ladies, but men's sexuality is always on. It has to be. That's just the way we were built. It's the way we evolved. It was much more efficient reproductive strategy for us to be able to ejaculate and evacuate. Thank you, John from Modern Life Dating. To hit it and quit it. To love them and leave them, right? To get in, get the job done and get out. That's why men get aroused especially when you're a young, teenage guy, the wind blows and you're ready to go, right? You see an attractive female, half nude female, and it triggers the parts of your brain that is associated with tool use. Men's sexuality is way different than women's. It is much quicker to provoke. It's much quicker to get going. It's much quicker to get in, get out, and get done. For women, it's much different. And as a result, women have to be that lock, right? They have to be the one they have to be quality control. So that's the difference there. So ladies, or I should say men, when you encounter that double standard, always remember the difference is the reason why they're upset about that, or the reason why that's even coming into their brains in the first place, is because of a presumption of similarities between men and women. Men and women are different. That's why. Sorry, it's one of those things, where and I love using this now because I'm much more unapologetic about it. So when I see that, or when I encounter that, whether I'm on a show or whether I'm discussing even just privately with women in a social circle or something like that, it's like, no, men and women are different. That's why. And yes, it is a double standard. It's only a double standard if you think you should be able to live out the same sexuality that a man does, and it's simply not true. So yes, a guy who can unlock a lot of locks is a higher status guy, not just amongst men who, well, let's go back to the locker room and talk about the girls we nailed. That you can make up all the little caricatures you want to about that. The fact of the matter is that guy's held in higher esteem because other women want to get with him, because there's social proof, because there's pre-selection, because your girlfriends want to nail the high value guy just as much as you do. And the way that you know that he's a high value guy is he looks good enough that he should, at least, maybe he is or maybe he isn't, but the presumption is he should be able to get with all those girls and impregnate each and every one of you because he's high value. This is exactly the way sperm banks work. It's not about intelligence as much as we would like to make it. We would like to say, oh, well, women are selecting men for artificial insemination, or they're looking for sperm donors who are like Fortune 500 CEOs, and they're looking for guys who have 180 IQs and are, astrophysicists. No, they're looking for the guy who's like the hottest dude they can find, because they're looking for the dude who is, the guy who's the basketball star. They're looking for the water polo body, right? They're looking for the guy who is ripped and looks good. That's what they base their selections on. It's icing on the cake if that guy happens to be intelligent and has his own business and loves his mom and likes puppy dogs. Great, but that's not the criteria generally. It might have been in generations past, but largely women are selecting when it comes down to, their own fertilization. If they are the locks, right? And here I go, I have all of these keys presented in front of me. Which key is that woman going to pick? That's where hypergamy comes in. I'm going to do another show. I was made aware of an article, and I forget maybe it was Rugby that sent me this. But it's an article of Chinese feminists who are, now that they've got, CRISPR and they've got custom tailor-made, designer babies right now, how women need to be the ones who are in control of that aspect of reproduction now. So if we're going to have designer babies, it should be women who are doing the designing. And it is eugenics for feminists. And in a gynocentric social order, that becomes very, very dangerous. I mean, it becomes like Nazi Germany eugenics kind of experiment type stuff. They don't call it that, and we're going to think that going forward, at least from what I can see, we're going to call it something a little bit different. But it's essentially the same thing. It's eugenics. Women, ever since we have ceded control of the human reproductive process over to women, we've had sort of a soft version of eugenics as it is. If you can freeze your eggs, ladies, if you can do that, wait it out till you're 40, then grab one of your young eggs and inseminate yourself with, the hot guy in the foam cannon party's donated sperm, well, you've just completed your hypergamous deal. And if the arrangement, and if the state and if resource transfer from other men to you also satisfies the beta buck side of hypergamy, well, you're done, right? Life complete. Life plan is complete. Courtesy of the state, courtesy of the society. But that's neither here nor there. What I wanted to focus on was the fact that when women are presented, being the locks that they are, when they are presented with multiple keys, they're going to look for the master key. They're simply going to look for the guy who checks off most of those lists, of that checklist. And one last thing before I move on to these other double standards here. I was also made aware of an article, and it was I believe it was in the Netherlands. And there was a kind of a concern going around because there was a guy who was on Facebook, I think Facebook or maybe it might have been on Instagram or something too. Guy was a sperm donor, but he was a private sperm donor. And so women could hit him up on Facebook and say, I'll pay you $300 for some of your let's say your samples. And the guy would meet them up, take a train somewhere, meet them up in a public place, transfer the goods. She gives him the money and he goes home and she inseminates herself, and, the rest is history, right? Well, this guy is so popular amongst women to reproduce with that it's getting to the point where he's created, I think he has been responsible for something like 70 pregnancies in a very closely confined area. So essentially what this guy has is he's got children, like half siblings, spread all over the Netherlands, right? Well, that's kind of dangerous when you think about these kids are going to grow up and they're going to have half of the same genetic material that essentially the worry is inbreeding. But the worry is only thought of later when at least 70, right? At least 70 women have decided that they want to use this one guy's sperm to reproduce with. Now, in the moment where women are saying, well, I'm never going to find the right guy and I'm going to have to go and go for artificial insemination, they're not thinking about that. They're just saying, this guy's cute. He's high. I was drunk. He was cute. And one thing led to another, right? He's the guy. He's the master key and she's the lock. Well, the lock has to open at some point if the lock wants to have a baby. So when we're looking at double standards, and we're looking at double standards in a gynocentric social order that is still predicated upon the blank slate ideal, we don't think about those things. Women certainly don't have the foresight to think about those things. And God forbid the state steps in and says, you know what, ladies, we can't have you reproducing with the same guy over and over and over again. It's like Genghis Khan, right? Was it 1 in every 200 people? I'm not. I hope this is true. I'm fairly sure this is true. But from what I've read, the Genghis Khan paradox, right, is that 1 in every 200 men on planet Earth is a direct descendant of Genghis Khan. Well, at least 70 descendants of this guy in the Netherlands are going to be wandering around and will hit a reproductive age, 18 years. Who knows how long he's been doing this, right? So you have to be careful of that. You got to be careful of that inbreeding. And God forbid the state steps in and says, ladies, you can't do this. You can't do this with your body. You can't reproduce with this guy, because if you do, there's going to be inbreeding and there's going to be consequences for that. Women don't want to be told they can't have the choice to do my body, my choice. You can't tell them what to do in a gynocentric social order. Anyways, I want to get into some of these other double standards. So double standards only really exist in that respect when we're looking at a social order that is based on the blank slate and is also based on social constructionism. Social constructionism is this, and there's nothing inherently wrong with social constructionism unless you're looking at it as just that side of things. So social constructionism, I've used this term before. You can call it constructivism or constructionism. I probably use it wrong. I mean the same thing, which is society creates, rights on the blank slate, right? On the tabula rasa. So you are actually the product of your social order. And while that is true when it comes to your mental software, so to speak, it is not true when it comes to your instinct and it comes to the machinery. And there's a lot more to the biological side of it. And people get a little bit put off because they think of it in terms of like determinism. Don't tell me I'm limited by anything. Well, you kind of are. And we see this being empirically proven daily right now. So when I talk about social constructionism, the reason I'm sort of giving you a preface here is because when I get into some of these other double standards, they tend to be based on social constructionism, which is rooted in the blank slate. So social constructionism in a nutshell is that your personality, men, women, ethnicities, religions, politics, whatever your beliefs are really just the sole product of the society that you were born and raised in. And there is, of course, there's going to be influence from society, but it's not the only thing. And the only way that certain isms, feminism, gynocentrism, works in a global social order is if the presumption of the blank slate is true, and if social constructionism is the sole reason why you are the way that you are. That's how you can get communism, socialism, communitarianism, feminism, name it. Name the ism. And right now, in a modernism right now, is pretty much predicated on those things. So I wanted to state that at first because I'm about to switch over here and show you. Gosh, I got to show you this one. Okay, so what this is this is a list. And let me see if I can go grab that again. Hang on one second. There we go. All right. So this was a list of double standards that I became aware of. It's a very long list. I don't necessarily have to go through all of these. I might just like skim through a few of these. This was compiled, I'm pretty sure, not by MGTOWs per se, not even so much by like quote unquote incels per se, but this was way back in the day. I have a blog post on therationalmale.com, and I will link it in the relevant links down here, but it is called Double Standards, as you might guess. I wrote this back in June of 2012. And it's a very brief post because I sort of let it ride on this list of male versus female double standards. So now I'm not saying, before I jump into this, I'm not saying that all of this is canon. I'm not saying that all of this should be the way that it is. But these are some of the differences, or these are some of the downside double standards that men have to deal with that women do not have to deal with, or because of the social order that they live in, these are what men have to deal with and what women have to deal with. So when we talk about, men, it's so unfair that women should be able to, or men should be able to go and bang whoever they want, which is nonsense, because if you look statistically right now, more men are not getting laid. More men between the ages of 18 and 29 right now are not getting laid, while more women are than those young men in that same demographic cohort. So that's nonsense right there. We can prove statistically right now, thanks to the internet, thanks to the GSS study, we can prove statistically that that is incorrect. It is women who are having more sex than men. So if that's the case, that throws that double standard right out the window. But these are based on a societal standard. So I'm going to go down the list here. So no confidence. For a woman, he'll ask me out. If you don't have confidence as a guy, you're screwed. And you can see what the rest of his stuff says. No money. Well, he's supposed to pay for the date, right? Societal standards. Social construction, is it? Is it not? Doesn't matter, because in a Western society, as a guy, you're screwed if you don't have any money. High value man, right? No college plans. Men don't generally care what a woman's level of education is. It only matters later on in life, perhaps. But for the most part, when men are selecting women as part of their mating strategy, you have to be hot and available. Those are the two primary things. It doesn't matter if you're a barista. It doesn't matter if you're a sandwich artist, ladies, at Subway. What matters is that you look good and you're funny and you're feminine and you're a good time and you're hot and you're available. For guys, no college plans. Well, I'm not sure I agree with this 100%. This is one of those things that I think has changed a little bit since I wrote this way back in 2012. College plans, guys will probably argue with me and say, it doesn't matter if you have college or not. You don't need it anymore. It's a scam. Okay, well, fine. You still got to be educated. There has to be some sort of education. You got to be intelligent, maybe. No friends. Okay. If a woman doesn't have any friends, he doesn't even ask if you don't have any friends. He doesn't care. Unless that woman is very, and again, don't think of these things in terms of binary extremes. Okay. Because what guys will say is they'll go, oh, no friends. I don't want to get with a woman who has no friends. Well, less friends. Okay. He doesn't even ask you about those. For you, if you don't have any friends, you need social proof as a guy to increase your status. You need social proof and pre-selection as a guy, and that's usually going to come from a third party. So if women do not have friends, you might look at her a little sideways, but you do not observe that, you do not judge that woman or discern that woman's character according to whether she has friends or she doesn't have friends, in the same way that you would if a guy is just sort of shut in, okay, lives in his mom's basement. Boring. If you're a boring guy, if you're a boring woman, it's expected of women to be boring. It's expected of women to sort of just like not have any interests. And when they do, when you find a woman who isn't boring, that is like finding pirate's gold, okay? For guys, if a guy is boring, forget it. He's got to be jester maxing, right? He's got to be a dancing monkey to some degree. And that's just simply part of men's burden of performance. I'm not going to say that's right or that's wrong. Again, don't think of these things in binary extremes. However, generally speaking, if you say, hey, ladies, are you looking for a boring guy? They're not going to say, yeah, sure, I really want that guy. Well, is it hot? Obscure interests. Okay. He'll pretend ladies, if you're interested in anthropology or you have some kind of like whack out obscure interest, men will pretend to be interested. They will lean over into that. Okay. For guys, you're kind of screwed. If your interest is American history, you're a real history buff. If you want to talk about the War of Independence or Civil War or whatever, or you want to talk about more esoteric subjects, she's going to look sideways at you if you don't know who the latest rap star is, right? Quiet. If you're a quiet woman, she just has to look good. If you're a guy and you're quiet, you're screwed. Rejects a member of the opposite sex. If you're a woman, he obviously doesn't meet her requirements. If you're a guy and you refuse reject a woman of the opposite member of the opposite sex, guys think they accuse you of being gay. They accuse you of being homosexual because guys are supposed to want chicks, right? Guys are supposed to want to get into that. I'm not sure I agree with this again 100% because it sort of depends on the woman herself, but guys do that often enough. If there's something that kind of rubs that guy the wrong way or it's not a match, yeah, maybe. Again, is this a double standard? Perhaps. Expects sex as part of the relationship. You're an assertive woman if you are expecting sex from the guy. If it's a guy, he just wants to get in your pants. Let's see. Not in the mood for sex. It's expected from women. And for men, you must be gay or impotent. Bad in bed. Women just lie back. It's okay. Starfish sex is perfect. For men, here's the double standard, and this is a big one. You're a worthless guy. If you can't get her off, if you can't make her come, if you can't whatever, the onus is on you to perform once again in the most intimate way. You're a worthless guy. Dump him and find someone who can satisfy you. There's another double standard, ladies. If you are raped and need help, tons of support groups and everyone is sympathetic. For men, everyone thinks you are lying because it's impossible to rape a man. You want to end your current marriage? File for divorce, and 70% of women do. Get half of your husband's assets, alimonies, and upgrade to a hotter, richer man. At least that's what it looks like on paper. That's the theory. Okay. For guys, have your life completely destroyed by biased divorce courts. Also, child custody and everything else that is also entailed with that. That's a big double standard. There's another one. Shitty low-end job with no career prospects. If you're a woman, all you have to do is be good looking. For guys, you're screwed. You've got to find a way up and out of that. Maybe I shouldn't, again, I did not compile this list, but I think a lot of guys want to be screwed. They want to say, I'm screwed if I don't have these things. What guys have to do, I wouldn't say necessarily that you're screwed or you're fucked on this whole thing. I would say that you need to find a way up and out of it. So if you have a low-end job with no career prospects, that's on you, and that's on your burden of performance, and you've got to find a way to get up and out of that. However, still a double standard. If you own guns, you're a brave woman who is taking action to defend herself. If you're a man, you're a crazy gun nut that doesn't really need guns in the first place. Don't want an expensive wedding. Knows how to handle her finances and plans for the future. If you're a guy and you don't want an expensive wedding, I'm not going to say you're screwed, but you are cheap. You come off as seeming like you don't want her to have her special day. Imagine being the guy on The View or like whatever female daytime talk show is talking about, marriages and weddings and stuff like that. And you're the guy that says, you know what? I don't really want to spend more than $3,000 on my wedding, or heck, let's just go through the drive-thru in Vegas, right? You're that guy, you become the cheap guy. If you're pure cheap, then you're lower value. Don't play sports or go to the gym. For women, it's expected. Maybe. Again, this is kind of Incelville here. And if you're a guy, everyone thinks you're a loser if you're not lifting. Bro, do you even lift? Okay, you should be playing sports. You should be going to the gym. However, there is that double standard between men and women in this sense. Okay, for women, it's not necessarily a requirement. Also, I also should say this. I wish I had this meme drawn up, but there's a meme going around. I think I still have it somewhere, where it says the difference between the ideal physical beauty or physical attractiveness or arousal, let's just say, for women, the benchmark and the capacity to achieve that is much different than it is for men. Men have to be able to lift. We have to be able to be down to a certain body weight. As I've said before, for guys, and this is where I think a lot of guys sort of lose the narrative. A lot of guys tend to think, and these are mostly blue pill guys. Now, I'm not saying, anybody who's red pill or understands this stuff, but amongst blue pill thinking is that women don't care so much about how a man looks. And that's only reinforced when you get these memes about like dad bods and things like that. It's nonsense, absolute utter nonsense. But guys get schnockered by that, right? They get fooled by that. Oops, let me push this back. Don't think for a second that women aren't physical. Don't think for a second that women don't think looks are important. They do. And in many cases, they're the most important thing. And they remain the most important thing up until women have to reprioritize things because they need to consolidate and they need to cash in when they can, with who they can, with the best with who they can. So bear in mind that when it comes to the gym, when it comes to working out, when it comes to physical fitness, when it comes to you looking, the standard of beauty for men, the idealized standard of beauty for men amongst women is much higher than it is for women. Women can be, they can be overweight. It doesn't matter what your hair looks like. It doesn't matter what your body type is. It doesn't matter what color you are. Seriously, women love to, that's another double standard, by the way. Women love to believe that men have a higher standard of beauty or an unattainable, unrealistic standard of beauty that men have, whereas women are more willing to accept a few extra pounds on a guy. Nonsense. And even more nonsense in an era when more women are having sex with less men. So it's not. I think even going forward, I will be even more vindicated for women's arousal standards, for women's beauty standards of men, because there's never been, like, for men, men go, when it comes to physical attractiveness, when it comes to arousal, all you have to do is look at pornography, right? I mean, look at all the niches of pornography. There's midgets. I mean, there's spinners, there's thin girls, there's fat girls, there's blonde girls, there's redheads, there's brunettes, there's purple hair girls. Look at the different niches of porn. Now, I'm not saying that's all the standard, but I'm saying men have a much broader scope when it comes to idealized female beauty and who they will mate with and who they will not mate with when it really comes down to it. For women, the athletic Greco-Roman look, the V-taper, the jawline, the strong jawline, the six-pack abs, the broad shoulders, the big bicep, 22-inch guns, right? That hasn't changed over the course of millennia. That is a double standard, and it's a double standard that goes the other way, but we think that it's men who have an unrealistic standard of beauty for women. They don't. Yes, men are more focused on fertility, youth, younger, hotter, tighter, definitely. And they're definitely focused on women who are between the ages of 21 and 24, 23, somewhere around there. Yes, you are 100% correct about that. However, what is acceptable to men between, say, the 20 percentile and the 80 percentile of guys, when it comes to the guys who are beta versus the guys who are high value, like 20% alpha guys, there's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of compromise that goes on in there, and much more so for men than for women. There's your double standard. Your country has conscription, meaning the draft. Okay. Men defend you for free. Employers prefer to hire you due to no reservist obligations. For women. For men, you're screwed. And this is this is one of those binaries. So men have to, at least in the United States, have to sign up for mandatory conscription, which is the selective services. And if you decide that you are a conscientious objector or whatever it is, you're still screwed because you sound like a coward. You're not willing to take the same risk as everybody else is. You are also, in some states, you're disallowed to have a driver's license. You cannot qualify for student loans, certainly a Pell Grant. You are ineligible for other social services if you do not have not officially registered with selective services. Women do not have to do that, and that has been the way it's been since they started selective services. There has never been a time where women have had a march on Washington and demanded to be drafted. Okay. Now I'm going to keep going. I'm just going to rip through these real quick. You think the world is biased against your gender and you seek equality. Millions of feminists around the world would agree and support you if you're a woman. If you're a man, you're a pussy. Grow some balls. You aren't physically capable of the work. You can't actually do the lifting. You're not tall enough to do the things you need to do. You can't actually become a combat specialist in the U.S. Army, whatever it is. Standards will be lowered for you so that it will be fair if you're a woman. For men, you're a loser. They think you're a loser. You are a loser because you can't hack it. They're not going to lower the standards for you, but they will lower the standards because they want to put more women in. That is a double standard. If I have to do things that a woman doesn't have to do and she can still get the same job or she can still qualify for whatever position that happens to be, simply because they've lowered the standard for her to enter into whatever that is, that's a double standard, ladies. You aren't attractive. If you're a woman, eventually someone will still settle for you because there's lots of guys who are no one's ugly after 2 a.m. For guys, you're screwed unless you are rich, famous, and marry a gold digger. Now, again, not saying that's 100%, but it's still a double standard. If you had sex with an underage member of the opposite sex, I'm going to end up doing a full video about the epidemic of women teachers who are essentially rapists, statutory rapists, I should say, of underage students, of underage boys. I'm going to do something about that, so bear with me. It's noted. I have it in the great big book of everything. I am going to do that. If you're a woman, you get a slap on the wrist. Everyone says the boy was really lucky. Where were those girls when I was a teenager, right? For men, you're raped to death in prison. You're dead. You're done. Your life is pretty much over. Your personal life is over. Your professional life is over. You might as well go and, get it over with because that's the end of the line for you. For women, there is a separate standard of justice for women that is much different from men, and that is a double standard. Throw an emotional tantrum and try to get your own way. If you're a woman, just use it's that time of the month excuse, or women are more emotional than men. For men, everyone thinks you're just a spoiled child and you're a narcissist and you're probably homosexual. Let's see. Hit your spouse during an argument. He's a man. He can take it. He probably deserved it too. For men, I think you know the results here. Spousal abuse, call the cops. Duluth model of feminism. Double standard. Expects gifts during Valentine's Day and or other holidays. It's a girl's special day. The man should pamper her. For men, you are getting sex. What more do you want? Or men are never owed sex. You're never owed. It's funny how we have such transactional nature of sex when it works in women's favor. But when a man has even the inkling that, I'm providing all this stuff, I'm doing all this stuff, I'm putting all this stuff out there, and yet sex is not being reciprocated. Intimacy doesn't even have to be sex. Intimacy, appreciation is not being reciprocated. Toughen up, take it on the chin. That's a double standard. I'm not saying it's right, not saying it's wrong. Just saying let you guys make the judgment call, but it is a double standard. Wants to feel as much pleasure as possible. For women, it's expected and encouraged for a woman to orgasm as fast and as much as possible. For men, if you orgasm before the woman is satisfied, you are a failure. Double standard. I will let you guys read the rest of these. The rest of them I don't want to get too tied up in all of this today. But so, anyways, and we're coming up on time. So I will put the link to this particular post in the description so you guys can go check out the rest of those double standards. However, last but not least, and at the end of this, I have to also point out, and this would not be a complete video on double standards if I didn't also indicate that as a guy, me just pointing these out, me just showing you that list, I didn't create. I'm the mess. I just work here, man. I'm the messenger. I showed this to you. That I picked this up. I believe I picked this up off of an old forum. It might have been a MGTOW forum. It might have been, who knows, right? Not my creation. But just my telling you about it, just my dedicating a video to this so you have a better understanding of what a double standard is, makes me sound like I think men are victims. And that's the hardest part when it comes to double standards. Men can never be victims because the moment you cast yourself in that, you are casting yourself in a female role. Women are the most vulnerable sex. They will always be victims. They will always cast themselves as victims. It is always useful for women for anyone to presume that women are victims because they are the vulnerable sex. They evolved that way. They will remain that way. And I don't care if it's a gynosexual social order or any other social order. Women will always be characterized as the vulnerable ones. The moment a man says, here are a list of 100 double standards that only go one way for men, what I'm doing right now probably sounds like I'm complaining. He's crying. He's bitching. He thinks that men are victims. The only reason why you think that is also because you believe in social constructionism. You believe, most likely, if you have a bad opinion of any of that list, or you say, oh, how dare Rollo talk about this? Men are never victims. They're not supposed to be. We're supposed to rise above that, right? We have a burden of performance. Our hierarchies, our competence, our status, our value as men is based on our burden of performance. The moment I start complaining about the burden of performance, that's when I sound like a bitch. That's when I sound like I'm whining and complaining. Men run the world, right? So how dare you point out these double standards? Whereas women can only point out double standards because they're the only ones who can be victims of a double standard. It's so unfair. Well, do you want a fair society, or do you want to be living in a society where there are differences between men and women? That, again, blank slate. So if you're leaning, and ladies, if you think that I'm complaining, or guys, any of you guys, blue pill men who are watching this, think, oh, Rollo's just crying and bitching about double standards. I'm not trying. I don't care one way or another what you think about me or these double standards. They exist. How you process those is up to what your outlook is on the social order. So when we're talking about how men are made, or we still live in this patriarchy, we still live in this, it's a man's world, and how dare you complain about the double standards that go against you? Well, if that's the case, then the double standard that goes against women does not apply. Because if I have to live as a man in a man's world, then you should live in a woman's world. You should be in that role. And you can say that it's unfair, but the only reason you think it's unfair is because you think that we should be all equal. If we were, then you should care about me talking about the other side of those double standards. So what you're saying, essentially, is if you're going to cry about the one double standard that affects women, that is the lock and the key effect, if you're going to complain about that, but you can't cross over and be at least in some way I don't care if you're sympathetic or whatever, if you can't at least understand the double standards that are applied to men, and there's a great many of them, if you can't, then you're not living in an equalist society. You're living in a one-sided society. You're living in a gynocentric society that is created by women for women, and men in that case, they still can't be the victim. And you still can't talk about stuff. You have to just simply sit there and take it on the chin, because the presumption is still that it is a patriarchy and you're in control of it. It's a man's world. So there you have it. That is the Double Standards show. If you have any disagreements, if you have any comments, please feel free to put them in the comment down there. I always leave my comments open. I will be doing a special, I think it's about maybe a 90-minute show with the guys from Masculine Geek, talking about pop culture and the red pill, sci-fi, Star Wars, that kind of stuff. We're going to kind of nerd out a little bit, but with a purpose. Tomorrow, it'll be on this channel. It'll be a live stream. We're going to start it at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. It'll be me, Drew Bay, Vince, and TJ. I think we're going to get Jeffro Johnson, and Aaron Clary will be joining us as well for that show. So do tune in for that, especially if you are. It'll be more about I won't say woke stuff, but it'll be more about social orders, and it'll be more about like where we are as storytellers today, I think is probably the better way to put it. And then on Saturday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time on Ryan Stone's channel, we will be live with Rule Zero, a full panel. And I don't know what his topic is, but that's where it will be. So look for that. And hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, if you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter. If you want to support this show, the best way to do that is simply buy the books, right? Buy the next book. Okay. There's your hard sale at the very end, right? I am an author. I do actually sell books. Or if you want to make a contribution of some kind, you can always join Patreon, which I'm trying to make a push for right now because I'm going to be doing group counseling and group workshops very soon. Probably the end of May, like the last week of May is when I will start the group workshops. So if you want to get on board with that, there's two ways you can do so. Become a Patreon member. You can be at the lowest level and you'll still get the emails. Okay. Or even if you say $5 a month, forget it, Rollo. I don't want to have anything to do with that, but I do want to get in on the workshops. Fine. Give me your email address on therationalmail.com. There will be a little pop-up that comes up. You can be a part of the newsletter, and the newsletter will then refer you to the workshops when I get down to it. So there you have it. Also, if you want to donate via crypto or PayPal or whatever, all of that's always in the descriptions. And that's about it. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.